pregnant single mom mistakenly sent her baby bump picture to a Korean Mafia boss. His ruthless response left her trembling. The Korean Mafia boss faces his greatest battle yet, and the man who saves his daughter changes everything. The knife was aimed at Hannah's chest. I watched it happen in slow motion, my gun already raised, my scream tearing from my throat. Too far. I was too far away. Then Jonathan Martinez did something I never expected. He lunged forward, his body becoming a shield. The blade meant for my daughter sank into his shoulder instead. Blood bloomed across his shirt as he crashed to the ground. Hannah safe beneath him. Get her out of here. His voice was strained with pain as my security team swarmed the park. Just get her somewhere safe. 3 men lay dead around us. 2 more were fleeing. My world had just turned into a war zone, and the man I threatened to kill 48 hours ago had just saved my daughter's life. Vicky dropped to her knees beside him, pressing her hands against his wound. Jonathan, stay with me. Oh God, there's so much blood. I knelt on his other side, my 3-year-old daughter trembling in my arms, her little hands clutching my shirt. The man who abandoned them was bleeding out on the pavement. The man who'd petitioned for custody. The man I'd hated with every fiber of my being. Why? The word came out broken. Why would you do that? Jonathan's eyes met mine, already glazing with shock. Because she's my daughter. Maybe not in any way that matters to her, but she's still my blood, and I already failed her once. That's when I heard the slow clap behind me. Jung-hoon emerged from behind a parked car, his expression a mixture of satisfaction and disgust. Beautiful, isn't it, cousin? The foreign dog bleeding for the bastard child. And you, the great Kangdae Park, helpless to stop any of it. My gun was in my hand before he finished speaking. You did this. I orchestrated it. Jung-hoon smiled. Those men weren't here to kidnap her, cousin. They were here to kill her, to remove your weakness permanently. But I underestimated the American's stupidity. Who knew he'd actually take a knife for a child he's never even met? Sirens wailed in the distance. People were screaming, and my daughter was crying into my shoulder while the man who'd saved her life bled out in front of us. You have 48 hours. Jung-hoon's voice was ice. The council meets in 2 days. You can show up and surrender your position voluntarily, or you can watch us vote you out while your foreign wife gets deported and this bastard dies from an infection. We'll make sure he gets in the hospital. Your choice, cousin. Your empire or your broken little family. He walked away as if he hadn't just threatened everything I loved. As if he hadn't just proven that my family was exactly the vulnerability everyone said they were. The ambulance arrived. Paramedics swarmed Jonathan. Vicky was crying, her hands covered in his blood. And Hannah looked up at me with those eyes that mirrored mine despite carrying none of my DNA. Daddy, is the nice man going to die because of me? That question, that single innocent question from my daughter broke something inside me. Or maybe it forged something stronger. No, baby. I held her closer. He's going to be fine. And so are we. All of us. But as they loaded Jonathan into the ambulance, as Vicky climbed in beside him without even asking my permission, as my security team secured the perimeter and Min-ho appeared with that look that said everything had just gone to hell, I knew the truth. The next 48 hours would determine everything. My position, my family, my life. And the man who might hold the key to saving it all was the same man I'd sworn to destroy. 2 days ago, Jonathan Martinez was my enemy. Yesterday, he was a complication I wanted gone. Today, he was the reason my daughter was still breathing. And tomorrow, I'd have to stand before the Council of Families and prove that love isn't weakness. That the bonds we choose are stronger than the ones we inherit. That a monster can become a man when he finally finds something worth fighting for. If you've ever had to face impossible choices, if you've ever had to prove that what you love makes you stronger, not weaker, if you've ever had to trust the last person in the world you expected, stay with me. Because what happens next will either forge us into an unbreakable family or shatter us into pieces that can never be put back together. And it all comes down to one meeting, one decision, one moment where I choose between the empire I built and the family that saved me. 2 hours earlier, everything had seemed almost normal. Vicky had taken Hannah to the park near our home, the one with the duck pond and the wooden playground that my daughter loved. It was a Saturday morning ritual they'd established over the past year. Quality time, Vicky called it. mother-daughter bonding while I handled business calls from home. I'd been on the phone with Min-ho, discussing the warehouse meeting with Jung-hoon scheduled for that evening, when my security detail's emergency channel crackled to life. 3 vehicles approaching the park. Occupants matched the profile of the Chun family enforcers. The voice was steady but urgent. Mrs. Park and the child are exposed. My blood turned to ice. I was already moving, already grabbing my gun, already shouting orders. Get them out, now. But even as I raced toward my car, even as my driver broke every traffic law to get me there, I knew we might be too late. The park was 15 minutes away in weekend traffic. My security team was good, but they were outnumbered if this was a coordinated attack. The Chun family, one of Jung-hoon's newer alliances, known for their brutality and their willingness to ignore the old codes about families being off-limits. If my cousin had truly unleashed them on Vicky and Hannah, then this wasn't just politics anymore. This was war. My phone rang. Vicky's number. I answered before the first ring finished. Kangdae. Her voice was terrified but controlled. There are men here. They're trying to get to Hannah. Where are you? By the duck pond. Your security team has us surrounded, but there are too many of them. I could hear it in the background. Shouting. The sharp crack of gunfire. Hannah crying. My 3-year-old daughter was in the middle of a firefight because my cousin wanted to prove a point. I'm 5 minutes away. Keep her down. Keep her safe. There's someone else here. Vicky's voice was confused. Jonathan. He just appeared out of nowhere and he's... The line went dead. Not disconnected. Dead. Someone had jammed the signal. The next 4 minutes were the longest of my life. My driver took corners at speeds that should have killed us. Min-ho was on his own phone, calling in every available resource, and I sat in the back seat, gun in hand, watching the city blur past and knowing that every second counted. When we arrived, the scene was chaos. My security team had formed a perimeter around Vicky and Hannah, but 3 men had broken through, weapons drawn. People were screaming, running, trying to get their own children to safety. And there, in the middle of it all, was Jonathan Martinez. He wasn't armed. He wasn't trained. He was just a man who'd apparently followed Vicky to the park, probably hoping for a chance to see his daughter from a distance. Now he was standing between those men and Hannah with nothing but his body as a shield. That's when the knife came out. That's when everything went into slow motion. That's when I realized I was about to watch my daughter die because I couldn't get there fast enough. But Jonathan moved, faster than I would have thought possible. He threw himself forward, taking the blade that was meant for Hannah. And as he fell, as blood began pooling beneath him, my security team finally got clean shots. 3 quick bursts, 3 bodies hitting the ground. By the time I reached them, it was over. The attackers were dead or fleeing. Jonathan was bleeding, and Hannah was safe in Vicky's arms, crying but untouched. Now, 2 hours later, I stood outside the emergency room at Seoul's best private hospital, watching through the observation window as surgeons worked on the man who'd saved my daughter's life. The knife had missed his lung by centimeters, missed his major arteries by even less. He'd been extraordinarily lucky, or perhaps fate had decided he deserved to survive his moment of redemption. Mr. Park. Mrs. Choi appeared beside me, her expression grave. We need to talk about what happens next. Not now. Yes, now. She was firm. Jung-hoon orchestrated this attack. He wanted Hannah dead to prove you were vulnerable. But he failed, and now you have leverage. Mr. Martinez saved your daughter's life in front of dozens of witnesses. That changes the narrative completely. I turned to look at her. How? Jung-hoon's argument has been that your foreign family makes you weak. That they're liabilities that endanger the organization. Mrs. Choi pulled out her tablet, showing me news footage already circulating online. Witness videos from the park. But what everyone just saw was a foreigner taking a knife for your child. An American man with no connection to your world, no obligation to your family, sacrificing himself to protect her. That's not weakness. That's the kind of loyalty that builds legends. She was right. I could already see it in the footage, in the way witnesses were describing what happened. Jonathan wasn't being portrayed as an enemy or a threat. He was being called a hero. The man who saved the innocent child from assassins. The immigration office will have to respond. Mrs. Choi continued. This attack, the fact that your daughter was targeted specifically, it validates every security concern you've raised. It proves your family needs protection, not deportation. And the council meeting? Still happening in 48 hours. Jung-hoon won't back down just because his attack failed. If anything, he'll be more dangerous now. Desperate. Mrs. Choi met my eyes. You need to decide what you're willing to sacrifice to keep your position. Because he's going to force you to choose. I've already chosen. The words came out harder than I intended. My family comes first. The position, the organization, all of it is worthless if I lose them. Then you need to make the council see that your family is an asset, not a liability. Mrs. Choi gestured toward the surgical suite. Start with him. Jonathan Martinez just proved he's willing to die for your daughter. That makes him valuable. That makes him someone you can work with. The idea of working with Jonathan, of welcoming him into any aspect of our lives, still felt like swallowing glass. But Mrs. Choi wasn't wrong. He'd earned something today. Respect at minimum. Maybe even trust. The surgical doors opened. A doctor emerged, pulling off his gloves. Mr. Park? Your guest is stable. The wound was serious but clean. Barring complications, he should make a full recovery. Relief flooded through me, surprising in its intensity. When can I see him? He's sedated now. We'll keep him under observation tonight, but you can visit once he wakes. The doctor paused. He's very lucky. A few centimeters to the left and we'd be having a different conversation. Thank you. I turned back to the observation window where I could see Jonathan's still form on the surgical table. He's very lucky indeed. Mrs. Choi left to handle the legal fallout. Min-ho arrived with updates on the surviving attackers, both of whom were in custody and surprisingly willing to talk. Jung-hoon had underestimated their loyalty. Or perhaps he'd simply assumed they'd succeed and silence wouldn't matter. They've confirmed Jung-hoon ordered the hit. Min-ho's voice was quiet. They were paid to make it look like a random attack, but their target was specifically Hannah. They were supposed to kill her and disappear before your security could respond. But Jonathan complicated things. Jonathan saved her life. Min-ho's expression was complicated. I never thought I'd say this, but we owe that American a debt. Yes, the admission didn't come easily. We do. What are you going to do about it? I don't know yet. I watched the surgical team begin to clean up, their emergency work complete. But I'm done treating him as an enemy. Whatever he was, whatever mistakes he made, he's proven where he stands. The boss wants to see you. Min-ho's tone shifted, becoming more careful. He's heard about the attack. He wants to know what you're planning for the council meeting. The boss, the head of our family organization, the man who'd mentored me, who'd chosen me to lead despite Jung-hoon's claim. He rarely involved himself in day-to-day politics, but an attack on a family member's child crossed lines even he couldn't ignore. Tell him I'll be there within the hour. He specified now. Min-ho gestured toward the exit. He's waiting in your car. I found him exactly where Min-ho said, sitting in the back seat of my vehicle, a man in his 70s who still commanded absolute authority through presence alone. Park Dae-young, my mentor and the closest thing to a father I'd had since my own died 20 years ago. Your cousin has made a grave error. His voice was soft but carried the weight of decades. Attacking a child, even to prove a political point, violates our oldest codes. He believes my family makes me weak. Your cousin believes many things that aren't true. Dae-young turned to look at me fully. But he's not entirely wrong that your situation is complicated. A foreign wife. A daughter who carries another man's blood. These things challenge our traditional understanding of family. I waited. Dae-young never spoke without purpose. Every word was chosen with care. But I've been watching you these past 3 years. Watching how you've balanced your responsibilities to us and to them. Watching how fatherhood has changed you. He paused. You're more strategic now. More careful. You think 3 moves ahead instead of just 1. Because you have something to protect beyond yourself. Some would call that a liability. Some would. Dae-young smiled thinly. I call it evolution. A man with nothing to lose is dangerous, yes. But a man with everything to lose? He's calculating. He doesn't take unnecessary risks. He builds alliances instead of just conquering enemies. He thinks about legacy. Is that what you see when you look at me? Legacy? I see a man who's finally worthy of the position he holds. De-young's expression turned serious. Jung-hoon wants to call a vote of no confidence. The council meets in 2 days, and he has support from the traditionalists who believe you've strayed too far from our ways. How many votes does he have? Enough to make it close, but not enough to guarantee victory. The outcome will depend on what you say, how you defend your choices. De-young leaned forward slightly. You need to make them understand that your family is your strength, not your weakness. That the loyalty you inspire in others, even in a foreigner who owes you nothing, is the mark of true leadership. Jonathan, the man who saved your daughter today. De-young nodded. Bring him to the council meeting. Let them see what kind of loyalty you command. Let them see that even a man you've never helped, a man who has every reason to hate you, would still die to protect what's yours. The suggestion was brilliant and risky in equal measure. Jonathan barely knew Hannah. He'd never even had a conversation with her, but he'd thrown himself on a knife for her without hesitation. That kind of sacrifice spoke to something deeper than logic or strategy. He's recovering from surgery. He might not be well enough. Then make him well enough. De-young's tone left no room for argument. You have 48 hours to prepare your defense. Use them wisely, because if Jung-hoon wins this vote, you'll lose everything. Your position, your influence. And without those, you won't be able to protect your family from the enemies your cousin will unleash. He left without another word, disappearing into the Seoul evening like smoke. Min-ho appeared at my window. What did he say? That I need to turn my greatest liability into my greatest asset. I looked back toward the hospital where Jonathan lay recovering. And I need to do it in less than 2 days. The next morning, I sat beside Jonathan's hospital bed waiting for him to wake. Vicky had been here most of the night before I'd finally convinced her to go home and rest. Hannah needed her mother, needed the reassurance that everything was going to be okay. Now it was just me and the man who'd saved my daughter. The steady beep of monitors, the harsh light of the hospital room, and the weight of everything I needed to say. Jonathan's eyes fluttered open around dawn. He looked disoriented at first, the drugs still clouding his awareness. Then his gaze focused on me, and surprise replaced confusion. You're here. You saved my daughter's life. Where else would I be? He tried to sit up, winced at the pain, and settled back against the pillows. Is she okay? Hannah, is she? She's fine. Physically untouched. Emotionally, she'll need time. But she's safe because of you. Jonathan's relief was visible, tension draining from his shoulders. Good. That's good. Why did you do it? I leaned forward. You don't know her. You've never even spoken to her. Why would you take a knife for a child who's a stranger to you? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the ceiling. When I was in rehab, they had us write letters. To the people we'd hurt, the people we'd abandoned. I must have written 100 letters to Vicky, apologizing for leaving her alone and pregnant. But the hardest letter was to Hannah. What did you say to her? That I was sorry. That I failed her before she was even born. That I knew I could never make it right, but I wanted her to know that somewhere out there, she had a biological father who thought about her every day. Jonathan's voice cracked. I never sent it. What would be the point? She doesn't know me. She has you. She does have me. The words came out harder than I intended. I'm her father in every way that matters. I know that. Jonathan finally looked at me. I'm not trying to take your place, Mr. Park. I couldn't even if I wanted to. You've been there for every moment of her life. You've earned the title I was too broken to claim. Then why file for custody? Why disrupt our lives? Because I needed to know she was okay. Needed to be able to give her medical information that might save her life someday. Jonathan gestured weakly at his bandaged shoulder. And maybe, in some small corner of my heart, I hoped I could be something to her. Not a father, I know that ship sailed. But maybe an uncle figure? Someone who cared about her from a distance? The honesty in his voice was disarming. This wasn't a man scheming to steal my family. This was a broken man trying to make amends the only way he knew how. The men who attacked us yesterday. I watched his face carefully. They were sent by my cousin to kill Hannah. To prove that my family makes me vulnerable. Jesus. Jonathan's shock seemed genuine. Who orders a hit on a 3-year-old? Someone desperate to prove a point. I stood, walking to the window. The council meets in 2 days. They're going to vote on whether I'm still fit to lead. Jung-hoon has convinced half of them that my foreign wife and non-biological daughter are liabilities that endanger the organization. Are they asking for your leadership to be revoked? Asking for me to be stripped of power, possibly exiled? Minimum, separated from the resources I used to protect Vicky and Hannah. I turned to face him. Without my position, I can't keep them safe. And Jung-hoon knows it. What do you need from me? The question surprised me. Show up at the council meeting. Tell them what you did and why you did it. Jonathan's eyes widened. You want me to testify in front of a council of crime families that I threw myself on a knife for your daughter? I want you to prove that the loyalty I inspire goes beyond blood and obligation. That even a man I've never helped, a man who has reasons to hate me, would still die to protect what's mine. I moved closer to his bed. You owe me nothing, Jonathan. Less than nothing. But I'm asking anyway. Help me prove to them that my family is my strength, not my weakness. He was quiet for a long time, processing. If I do this, if I stand in front of these people and tell them what happened, what I get in return? The answer I'd been preparing died on my lips, because Jonathan wasn't asking for money or favors. He was asking for something far more valuable. You get to be part of Hannah's life. Limited, supervised, on our terms. But you get to know your daughter. Not as a father, that title is mine, but as someone who cares about her. Someone who's proven they'd die for her. Jonathan's eyes filled with tears. You'd really allow that? After everything? After everything, you saved her life. That earns you more than I can ever repay. I extended my hand. Help me at this council meeting. Help me prove that love and loyalty aren't weaknesses. And in return, I'll help you be the person you should have been from the beginning. He gripped my hand, his own shaking. Deal. The next 36 hours were a blur of preparation. Mrs. Choi worked with Jonathan on his testimony, coaching him on what to say and, more importantly, how to say it to men who respected strength over sentiment. Minho coordinated security, ensuring that Jung-hoon couldn't orchestrate another attack before the council meeting. And I met with every family head I could reach, gauging support and building alliances. Vicky stayed home with Hannah, both of them processing the trauma in their own ways. My daughter had grown quiet since the attack, clinging to her mother with an intensity that broke my heart. She'd asked about the nice man who got hurt several times, her 3-year-old mind trying to make sense of violence and sacrifice. The evening before the council meeting, I found Vicky in Hannah's room, watching our daughter sleep. The nightlight cast soft shadows across both their faces, and for a moment, I just stood in the doorway, memorizing the scene. Tomorrow would determine whether I could keep protecting these moments or lose everything trying. She asked about Jonathan again today. Vicky spoke without turning. Wanted to know if he was okay, if the bad men hurt him because he protected her. What did you tell her? That he's getting better, that he was very brave. Vicky finally looked at me, her eyes red from crying. She called him her guardian angel. Said he appeared just when she needed him most. Maybe he did. I moved to sit beside her on the floor, our backs against Hannah's bed. I've been so focused on seeing him as a threat that I missed what he actually was. Just a broken man trying to make amends. Do you trust him now? I trust that he loves her. Whether I trust his motives, his staying power, that's still being determined. I reached for Vicky's hand, but he earned the chance to prove himself. That's more than I was willing to give him 2 days ago. What happens tomorrow? At the council meeting? I defend our family. I prove that you and Hannah make me stronger, not weaker. And if I'm lucky, I convince enough of them that loyalty and love are assets worth more than traditional bloodlines. And if you're not lucky? Vicky's voice was small, afraid. I squeezed her hand tighter. Then we figure out plan B. But I'm not giving up without a fight. I've built too much, we've come too far, to let Jung-hoon take it all away because he's afraid of change. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we sat in silence, listening to Hannah's soft breathing. Whatever tomorrow brought, whatever the council decided, we'd face it together. That much I knew with certainty. The council met in a private estate on the outskirts of Seoul, a traditional hanok that had belonged to our organization for 3 generations. 15 family heads sat in a semicircle, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Jung-hoon sat among them, his face a mask of confidence. I entered alone as tradition demanded. Vicky waited in an anteroom with Jonathan, who'd been discharged from the hospital that morning against his doctor's recommendations. Min-ho stood guard at the door, his presence a silent reminder that whatever happened in this room, I wasn't without allies. Park Kang-dae, the eldest council member, Kim Sang-woo, spoke first. Your cousin has called for a vote of no confidence in your leadership. He claims that your foreign attachments have compromised your judgment and endangered our organization. How do you answer these charges? I stood in the center of the room, meeting each pair of eyes with steady calm. I answer that my cousin mistakes evolution for weakness, that he clings to old ways because he fears what change might mean for his own position. Jung-hoon's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Not yet. This was my time to speak. 3 years ago, I married a foreign woman and became father to a child who doesn't share my blood. I won't apologize for either choice because they've made me a better leader than I was before. I paused, letting the words settle. A man with nothing to lose is reckless. He takes unnecessary risks because consequences mean nothing. But a man with a family? He thinks strategically. He builds alliances instead of burning bridges. He considers long-term stability over short-term gains. Pretty words. Jung-hoon finally spoke. But words don't change the fact that your wife and child were nearly killed in broad daylight 3 days ago. Your enemies see them as leverage against you. That makes them liabilities we can't afford. You sent those men. I turned to face him directly. You orchestrated that attack to prove your point. So let's be clear about who endangered whom. Murmurs rippled through the council. Jung-hoon's expression didn't change, but I saw the calculation in his eyes. He'd expected me to dodge the accusation, not confront it head-on. I have no idea what you're talking about. His voice was smooth, practiced. But even if such an attack occurred, it only proves my argument. Your family is a target. That makes you vulnerable. My family inspires loyalty that you could never understand. I gestured toward the door. Min-ho, bring them in. The door opened, and Vicky entered first. Her spine straight and her expression fierce despite the fear I knew she felt. Behind her came Jonathan, his arm in a sling, his face still pale from blood loss. They stood on either side of me, a united front that clearly surprised the council. 3 days ago, this man saved my daughter's life. I placed a hand on Jonathan's shoulder. He's her biological father, a stranger she's never met, a man who owes me nothing. Yet when assassins came for her, he threw himself on a knife without hesitation. I could see the council processing this information, recalculating their assumptions. Jung-hoon's expression had darkened considerably. That's the kind of loyalty my family commands. Not through blood or obligation, but through choice. Through proven dedication. I looked at each council member in turn. You question whether my foreign wife is an asset. She's built a legitimate business that provides cover for several of our operations. You question whether my daughter is a liability? She's inspired loyalty in people who have no reason to give it. Jonathan stepped forward, his voice steady despite obvious pain. I abandoned Vicky when she was pregnant. I ran because I was broken and afraid. For 3 years, I've lived with that shame, knowing I failed the most basic test of manhood. When I found out where she was, I planned to fight for custody, to take back what I'd thrown away. The room was silent. Everyone focused on Jonathan's words. Then I saw them together. Saw how Kang-dae looked at Hannah like she hung the moon. Saw how Vicky had built a life and a family that didn't need me anymore. Jonathan's voice cracked. I realized I'd been replaced by someone better. Someone who actually showed up. He turned to look at me, his eyes bright with unshed tears. So when those men came for her, when I saw that knife heading toward my daughter's heart, I didn't think. I just moved. Because even though I have no right to her, even though I gave up that privilege years ago, she's still part of me. And if protecting her meant dying for the man who's been everything I should have been, then that was a price I'd gladly pay. The silence that followed was profound. Even Jung-hoon seemed at a loss for words. This is what my family inspires. I broke the silence. Loyalty so deep that even strangers would die for us. That's not weakness. That's power. The kind of power that can't be taken by force or vote. It has to be earned. Kim Sang-woo leaned forward. You ask us to accept that a foreigner and a child born of another man are assets to our organization. But what happens when the immigration office succeeds in deporting your wife? When her biological father demands custody? These external pressures still exist. They do. I nodded. But they're not insurmountable. Mrs. Choi has filed a motion with the immigration court, using the attack on Hannah as evidence that my family requires protection, not deportation. As for custody, Jonathan and I have reached an agreement. Jonathan stepped forward again. I'm withdrawing my petition for custody. My daughter has a father, a real one who's earned that title every single day. I placed my hand on his good shoulder. But he will have a place in Hannah's life. Limited, supervised, on our terms. Because he's proven he deserves that much. You're trusting the man who abandoned your wife? One of the council members asked, skepticism clear in his voice. I'm trusting the man who took a knife for my daughter. There's a difference. I met his gaze steadily. Redemption is possible. Change is possible. That's what my family represents. The ability to evolve, to become more than what we were. Jung-hoon finally stood, his composure cracking. This is insanity. You're asking us to abandon our traditions, our codes, for some fantasy of found family and redemption. His voice rose. We are what we are. Blood, honor, tradition. Those are the pillars of our strength. No, I turned to face him fully. Fear is what you're built on. Fear of change. Fear of irrelevance. Fear that if you're not defined by the accident of your birth, you'll have nothing left to offer. The room went deadly silent. I just accused my cousin of cowardice in front of the entire council. There was no walking that back. You think I'm afraid? Jung-hoon's hand moved toward his jacket, toward the gun I knew he carried. I think you're terrified. I didn't move, didn't reach for my own weapon. Terrified that the world is changing and you don't know how to change with it. Terrified that men like me are building power through loyalty instead of fear. Terrified that when history looks back, you'll be remembered as the one who clung to the past while everyone else moved forward. Jung-hoon's hand stopped, hovering near his weapon. Killing me here would prove my point, and he knew it. Violence wasn't the answer to ideological battles. Enough. Kim Sang-woo's voice cut through the tension. Park Jung-hoon, you have made your case. Park Kang-dae, you have made yours. Now we will vote. The next few minutes felt like hours. Each council member stood in turn, stating their position. Some sided with Jung-hoon, citing tradition and the need to maintain clear boundaries between our world and the civilian one. Others sided with me, acknowledging that the organization needed to evolve or die. When the count finished, the room was split. 7-7. Tie. Kim Sang-woo sighed heavily. In the event of a tie, the deciding vote falls to our chairman. He turned toward the back of the room, where Park Dae-young had been sitting silently throughout the proceedings. My mentor stood slowly, his age showing in the careful way he moved. Every eye in the room fixed on him. I have watched this organization for 50 years. His voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. I have seen us rise and fall, adapt and resist, survive and thrive. And I have learned one fundamental truth. We survive not because we are the strongest or the most ruthless, but because we know when to hold firm and when to bend. He walked to the center of the room, standing between Jung-hoon and me. Park Jung-hoon argues for tradition, for the old ways that have served us well. There is merit in his position. We should not abandon our foundations lightly. Dae-young paused, but Park Kang-dae argues for evolution, for adapting to a world that has changed whether we like it or not. And there is wisdom in his position as well. Jung-hoon's expression brightened slightly, sensing a compromise that might salvage his position. But this is not a debate about tradition versus change. Dae-young's tone hardened. This is about a man who orchestrated the attempted murder of a child to prove a political point. The room erupted. Several council members turned to Jung-hoon with expressions of shock and disgust. My cousin's face went pale. Do you deny it? Dae-young asked him directly. I was trying to protect the organization. Jung-hoon's voice was defensive now, desperate. She's a liability. I was removing a weakness before our enemies could exploit it. You were murdering a 3-year-old girl. Dae-young's disgust was palpable. There are lines we do not cross. Codes we do not violate. The families may be off limits has been our sacred rule for generations. You shattered it because you were afraid of losing power. He turned to address the full council. My vote is with Park Kang-dae. Not because I believe his way is perfect, but because I believe he understands what we must never forget. That we are not monsters. That we are men with families and honor. That we can evolve without losing our souls. The decision was final. 8-7. I retained my position. Jung-hoon's face was a mask of barely controlled rage. This isn't over. He spoke quietly, but everyone heard. You've won today, cousin. But the consequences of your choices will destroy you eventually. Perhaps. I met his glare steadily. But I'll face those consequences with my family beside me. Can you say the same? He left without another word, 2 of his supporters following. The remaining council members approached me one by one, some offering genuine congratulations, others merely acknowledging the outcome with professional courtesy. When the room finally cleared, only Vicky, Jonathan, Dae-young, and I remained. That was risky, Dae-young said, though his expression held approval. Accusing him publicly like that. He tried to kill my daughter. I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. No, you weren't. Dae-young smiled slightly. Your father would be proud. He always said the best leaders were the ones willing to burn bridges when principles were at stake. After Dae-young left, the 3 of us stood in the empty council room. Vicky's hand found mine, her grip tight. Is it really over? She asked quietly. For now. I pulled her close. Jung-hoon won't accept this defeat gracefully. We'll need to stay vigilant. I can help with that. Jonathan spoke up, then seemed to realize how presumptuous that sounded. I mean, if you want. I know some people in the States. Security consultants, private investigators. People who could provide an outside perspective on threats. I studied him for a long moment. He was trying to find his place, to be useful. To earn the role he'd been granted. We'll take you up on that. I extended my hand. Welcome to the family, Jonathan. Such as it is. His grip was firm despite his injury. Thank you for giving me a chance I don't deserve. You earned it. I released his hand. But understand this. One mistake, one moment where I think you're putting them at risk and you're gone. No second chances. Fair enough. Jonathan nodded. I wouldn't expect anything less. The immigration hearing took place a week later. Officer Kim Min-seo sat across from us with an expression that suggested she'd sucked on something sour. The attack on Hannah had made international news. Witness videos had gone viral, and public sentiment had swung decisively in our favor. Mrs. Choi presented our case with clinical efficiency. The attack on Mrs. Park's daughter, carried out in broad daylight in a public park, demonstrates that this family faces genuine security threats. Deporting Mrs. Park would not only separate a mother from her child but would remove them from the protection her husband can provide. Officer Kim shuffled papers, clearly uncomfortable. The investigation into the marriage's legitimacy is ongoing. An investigation that has found no evidence of fraud. Mrs. Choi's smile was sharp. No inconsistencies in their story. No financial transactions that suggest a business arrangement. Nothing but a family that has built a life together. The biological father has withdrawn his custody petition. Officer Kim tried another angle. Doesn't that suggest the marriage was indeed a convenience? Jonathan was in the room, having insisted on attending. He spoke before Mrs. Choi could respond. I withdrew my petition because I finally understood what being a father actually means. It's not about DNA or legal documents. It's about showing up every single day. His voice was steady. Kang-dae has been Hannah's father since the day she was born. I'm just the guy who provided genetic material and then ran away. The marriage isn't a convenience. It's a miracle that my daughter found a real parent when her biological one failed her. The raw honesty in his words seemed to take Officer Kim by surprise. She looked down at her papers, then back up at us. I'm recommending approval of Mrs. Park's permanent residency application. Her voice was flat, professional. The evidence supports a genuine family relationship, and the security concerns are well documented. This office has no grounds to separate this family. Relief washed over me, though I kept my expression neutral. Vicky's hand squeezed mine under the table. However, Officer Kim's gaze fixed on me. Any future violations, any indication that this approval was granted under false pretenses, will result in immediate revocation and deportation. Are we clear? Crystal clear. I met her gaze steadily. You won't find any violations because there aren't any to find. After we left the immigration office, Vicky broke down crying in the car. Not from sadness, but from the release of months of accumulated stress and fear. I held her while she sobbed, feeling my own eyes burning with tears I wouldn't let fall. It's over, she whispered against my chest. It's really over. This part is. I kissed the top of her head. Now we just have to figure out how to actually live the life we've been fighting for. That evening, we introduced Jonathan to Hannah properly. Not as a stranger or a guardian angel, but as someone who would be part of her life going forward. Hannah sat on Vicky's lap in our living room, eyeing Jonathan with the solemn curiosity unique to 3-year-olds. He sat across from us, his arm still in a sling, looking more nervous than he had facing the council. Hannah, do you remember the man who helped you at the park? Vicky spoke gently. The one who got hurt protecting you? The nice man. Hannah nodded. Is he better now? I'm getting better. Jonathan's voice was soft. Thanks for asking. Why did you help me? Hannah asked with the directness of a child. You don't know me. Jonathan glanced at Vicky and me, seeking permission. We both nodded slightly. Well, this is a little complicated. But you know how you have a mommy and a daddy? Hannah nodded. A long time ago, before your daddy came along, I knew your mommy. And when she was having a baby, that baby was you. Hannah processed this seriously. So you know me from when I was a baby? Sort of. I knew about you, and I've wanted to meet you for a long time. Jonathan's eyes were bright with unshed tears. So when I saw you needed help, I wanted to make sure you were safe. Because you know Iyama? Because I care about you. Even though we just met, I've cared about you for a very long time. Hannah considered this with the gravity of a judge. Are you going to stay, or are you going to go away? The question cut to the heart of every abandonment fear a child could have. Jonathan's composure cracked. I'm going to stay, as much as your mommy and daddy will let me. Promise. Hannah looked at me. Appa, is he going to be my friend? I met Jonathan's eyes over my daughter's head. Yes, sweetheart. He's going to be your friend. Okay. Hannah slid off Vicky's lap and walked over to Jonathan with the fearlessness of a child who'd been raised in safety. You should come to my recital. I'm going to dance and Appa says I'm very good. Jonathan's smile was tremulous. I would love to come to your recital. And you should meet Mr. Whiskers. He's my cat. Well, he's a stuffed cat, but he's very important. As Hannah led Jonathan off to meet her extensive collection of stuffed animals, Vicky leaned against me. We're really doing this. Her voice held wonder. Building a family that includes my ex, your enemies, and a 3-year-old who thinks stuffed animals are people. Best family I've ever had. I pulled her closer. Messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. 6 months later, life had found a new rhythm. Jonathan visited twice a month, always supervised, always respectful of boundaries. He'd moved to Seoul permanently, taking a job teaching English at an international school. Hannah had started calling him Uncle Jonathan, a title that seemed to fit better than any legal designation. Jung-hoon had been quietly removed from his position in the organization, not because of the council vote, but because Dae-jung had privately made it clear that attempting to murder a child had permanently destroyed any credibility he might have had. My cousin now ran a small legitimate business, his ambitions permanently curtailed. The immigration office had granted Vicky permanent residency with a path to citizenship. Officer Kim had been transferred to a different department after an internal review suggested inappropriate bias in her handling of our case, and our family had grown stronger for having weathered every storm thrown at us. I stood in the audience of Hannah's dance recital, Vicky on one side and Jonathan on the other. Minho sat behind us with Dae-jung, both of them having taken surprising interest in my daughter's development. When Hannah took the stage in her tiny hanbok, performing a traditional Korean dance she'd been practicing for months, I felt my throat tighten with pride. She moved with grace and confidence, completely unaware that the audience included both crime lords and her biological father. She's beautiful, Jonathan whispered. You've done an amazing job with her. We've done an amazing job. I corrected. All of us. because that was the truth I'd finally learned. Family wasn't about blood or legal documents. It wasn't about who provided DNA or who signed which papers. Family was about who showed up, who stayed when things got difficult, who sacrificed and compromised and fought to protect what mattered. Vicky reached for my hand as Hannah finished her dance and took an elaborate bow. On my other side, Jonathan wiped at his eyes, not bothering to hide his tears. After the recital, we took Hannah out for ice cream, our strange little family laughing over her dramatic retelling of a misstep that no one but her had noticed. "Appa, can Uncle Jonathan come to my birthday party next month?" Hannah asked around a mouthful of chocolate ice cream. "If he wants to." I looked at Jonathan. "Though I warn you, 3-year-old birthday parties are exhausting. I wouldn't miss it." Jonathan's smile was genuine. Exhausting sounds perfect. That night, after Hannah was asleep and Jonathan had returned to his apartment, Vicky and I stood on our balcony looking out at Seoul's glittering skyline. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "Everything you gave up to keep us?" "I didn't give up anything that mattered." I pulled her close. "I just finally figured out what actually matters. Your cousin." Vicky hesitated. "Do you think he'll ever forgive you?" "Probably not. But I've made my peace with that. Jung-hoon wanted me to choose between power and family. I chose family. I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. Even knowing what it cost you, especially knowing what it cost me. I turned her to face me, because what I gained was worth infinitely more than what I lost. She kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When we pulled apart, she smiled. "Our daughter asked me today if Uncle Jonathan was sad." "What did you tell her?" "That he used to be very sad, but he's getting happier. Because sometimes people need second chances to become who they were always meant to be." Wise answer. I brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Think that applies to all of us?" "I know it does." She leaned her head on my chest. "You got a second chance. Jonathan got a second chance. Even Jung-hoon might get one eventually, if he's willing to change. And you? What kind of chance did you get?" "The chance to build the family I always dreamed of. Even if it looks nothing like what I imagined." Vicky's voice was soft. "The chance to love and be loved without conditions. The chance to watch our daughter grow up safe and happy. That's more than a second chance. That's a miracle." We stood together in the Seoul night, two people who'd found each other through a wrong number and built something beautiful from broken pieces. Around us, the city hummed with life and danger and possibility. Jung-hoon was right about one thing. My family had changed me, made me different from the cold, calculating man I'd been. But he was wrong about what that meant. Love hadn't made me weak. It had made me dangerous in ways my enemies couldn't anticipate. Because a man protecting his empire might compromise, might negotiate, might accept strategic losses. But a man protecting his family? He'd burn the world to ash before letting them come to harm. 3 years ago, a single mistyped digit had brought Vicky into my life. A wrong number that became the most right thing that ever happened to me. And now, standing here with my wife in my arms and my daughter sleeping safely inside, I understood what fate had been trying to teach me all along. Sometimes the universe sends you exactly what you need in the most unexpected packages. Pregnant woman's desperate text. A biological father's redemption. A cousin's betrayal that forced you to choose what truly mattered. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you're wise enough to recognize the gift before you lose it. My phone buzzed with a text. "Minho. Boss, we have a situation with the Busan territory. Jung family is making moves." I looked at the message, then at Vicky, then back at the warm light spilling from Hannah's bedroom window. "Handle it." I typed back. "I'm with my family tonight. The organization would survive without me for one evening. The Busan situation would still be there tomorrow. But these moments, these precious hours with the people who taught me what actually mattered, these were finite and irreplaceable. I spent too many years prioritizing the wrong things. Building an empire while my soul withered. Conquering territories while my heart turned to stone. Never again. Vicky looked up at me, sensing my thoughts. "Everything okay? Everything's perfect." I kissed her forehead. "Come on, let's go check on our daughter." We found Hannah exactly as we'd left her, curled around Mr. Whiskers with her stuffed tiger tucked under one arm. The night light cast gentle shadows across her peaceful face. She looks like you when she sleeps. Vicky whispered. That same serious expression, like she's solving problems in her dreams. She gets that from me. I smiled. The insomnia and the overthinking, and the fierce loyalty, and the protective instincts. Vicky's voice was warm, and the capacity to love so deeply it changes everything. I pulled her close, and we stood together in our daughter's doorway, watching her sleep. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Jung-hoon wouldn't stay quiet forever. The organization would always have crises that needed attention. And Jonathan would continue the slow, careful work of building a relationship with the daughter he'd almost lost forever. But tonight, in this moment, we were simply a family. Messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. The wrong number that had started everything sat in Vicky's phone, saved in her contacts. Sometimes she showed it to me, laughing at how one mistyped digit had changed our entire lives. Fate, I always said. Destiny. Luck. She'd counter. Remarkable, impossible luck. Maybe it was both. Maybe it was neither. Maybe it was just the universe's way of showing us that the best things in life come from the places we least expect. All I knew for certain was this. I'd been given a second chance at everything. At love. Family. At being the kind of man who deserved both. And I wasn't going to waste a single moment of it. The end. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you sacrifice to protect the people you love? What does family mean to you? Thank you for staying with Kangdae, Vicky, Hannah, and yes, even Jonathan, through every twist and turn of their journey. Your support means everything. Until next time, remember to always check your texts. You never know when a wrong number might change your life.